guys, it's Mikkel with MikkelMakes.com, and today I thought I would show you how to sew Simplicity 8520. It's this onesie pattern, and I sewed this for my family for Christmas, so I've made 6 of these onesies, and so I thought I would show for anyone else that was interested in making this pattern step by step how to do it. Now go ahead and look at the back of your pattern and take your measurements and decide what size you will need. Now, because this is not really a fitted design, you're going to fit pretty easily into either small, medium, large, and then for the adults, extra small, small, medium, large, or extra large. Since I made this for my family, I've made pretty much every size. I made the extra large for my husband, but seeing as this is a woman's pattern, it didn't quite fit in some areas, so he's 6'2". So I'm going to remake it today, and I am actually going to add 3 to 4 inches in the midline in the waist area, and 3 to 4 inches in the arms and the legs to account for his extra height. So I will be modifying my pattern a bit today, but you will most likely be able to take this pattern straight out of the packet and use it. So using the directions given to you in the pattern, go ahead and cut out your pattern pieces and then meet me back here and we'll get started. Okay, so now that you have your pattern pieces cut, go ahead and mark the notches on your fabric and also the placement of the pocket. I am doing view A, which has the hoodie included, so I cut out pieces 1 through 8. So go ahead and grab your pocket piece, which is piece number 2, and meet me back here. Okay, if you're wondering how to lengthen the pattern for a taller person as well, there are lines on your pattern, these double lines right here, that show appropriate places to lengthen or shorten. So go ahead and just cut on these lines and add extra room with tissue paper. So it looks like this. I've gone ahead and done it at the waistline. I've cut on the line and I've added about 3.5 inches extra with tissue paper that I've just taped back together, and that lengthens the pattern. And do the same thing if you need to shorten it. So you don't cut, but you fold on the line and just fold it where you need it to be shortened. Okay, so for the first step, you're going to take your pocket piece, and on the curved edge right here, you're going to fold under your seam allowances, which is 5/8 for this pattern. Because this is such a bulky fabric that I'm using, I'm going to fold over just a little bit and sew it, and then I'll fold it under again and sew it again. And also, because this is a knit fabric, make sure that you have a knit needle in, and also on our securing seams we're going to do a zigzag stitch so that it stretches with the fabric. This seam I can just do a straight stitch because it's just the edge of the pocket, but for your other seams you're going to want to do zigzag, and I'll show you that when we get there. I'm going to fold that down again and sew that again. Back stitching at the end. Okay, so now that you have your pocket opening seam done, you're going to turn the pocket over and you're going to take your seam gauge and measure 5/8 of an inch on the bottom, side, and top. And you can press it down to keep it in place, or I'm going to just pin it and sew a quick line to hold it in place, and then we'll take it over to the onesie to be put on. Okay, once you have your edges pressed down or sewn down like I do, we're going to take them to your front piece. Okay, so I have here pattern piece number 1, and it's right side up. This is the front of our onesie, and I've lined them up so that the notches are kind of right across from each other. So you're going to take your pocket piece And I've marked with pins where the opening should go. But then I also want to make sure that when I line up my pocket piece on the other side, that they line up. So make sure up here looks good. So like when they're butted up against each other, I want them to line up. Okay, once you have your pocket pieces pinned onto your front, you're going to go ahead and take it to your machine and sew. So you're going to start here and you're going to sew along the top. Then you're going to switch to a basting stitch and baste down this line, and then you're going to sew across the bottom and up here. Make sure that you back stitch at the beginning and end to secure those pocket pieces. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll meet you back here. Okay, so now that you have your pocket pieces sewn onto your front pieces, you're going to go ahead and take your back piece, which is piece number 4, and you're going to line up at the crotch seam right here, your back piece, right sides facing to your front piece. And you're going to line up your notches and sew down this seam. Now you can use a standard sewing machine, but because it is knit fabric, you're going to need to use a zigzag stitch. Otherwise, when you put it on and anytime it wants to stretch and move with you, it will pop the seam. Or you can use a serger if you have one. I am going to use a serger today, but you can definitely use any machine. For parts of it, I'm going to use my standard sewing machine, like for the pocket and the zipper. But for the most part, I'll be doing most of the seams with a serger. Okay, so now that you have that inner leg seam sewn, you're going to open this up. And place the other front and back on top, right sides facing. There should be 3 little notches right here that you can match up. Match up your seams at the crotch. Okay, so match up your crotch seams and any other notches. Okay, there should be a notch right below the pocket, which is where you're going to end with your sewing. So you're going to go sew from the center back, which is up here, all the way down through the crotch, end at your notch marks, which are right below your pockets. Okay, now grab pattern piece number 3, which is the sleeve piece. And in one of the sides of the sleeve, there should be 1 notch. Now 1 notch indicates the front. So this is the front of the pattern and it has 1 notch as well. So you're going to line up right sides together, those notches, and pin it. Okay, then you're going to take the other side of your sleeve and pin it right sides together to the back, lining up your notches. Then you're going to sew or serge those two edges. And it's also important to note, if you are using a serger, make sure that you're lining up at the 5/8 seam allowance. And then you're going to repeat for the other sleeve on the other side. Okay, now grab pattern piece number 5, which is the neckband. And with right sides or wrong sides together, matching your notches, you're going to fold it in half and pin it, and then you're going to baste along the raw edges just to keep it in place for when you secure it to the onesie. Okay, so go ahead and baste that edge in place. Okay, so now find the neck on your onesie and take your neckband. You're going to start by pinning off the edges, and then I like to go to the back seam, and there's 2 notches back here that will match up with the notches in here. I like to pin that back seam first, and then I'll come over and pin the other neck side seam. So what's going to happen is your neckband is a lot shorter than your neck area in your onesie. So you are going to have to stretch the neck piece while you sew. So again, between these 2 points, the back of your neckband and the front of your neck, I like to find the middle, which is right here. And then the middle point of these 2 seams is right here. So I'm going to line those up just so I have more marker points to know where I'm supposed to be meeting with my stretching. So I know when I sew, I'm going to have to stretch the neckband to fit into these certain areas. So go ahead and sew your neckband to the neck hole of your onesie, stretching the neckband to fit as you go. And I usually do this part on my sewing machine because my serger doesn't allow for a lot of stretching, it messes it up. So I like to do this part on my sewing machine just so I know I can stretch while I am sewing. Make sure that you backstitch a few times at the beginning since you will be pulling this quite a bit, and make sure you're on your 5/8 seam allowance. So go ahead and stretch it. Make sure and check every now and then that you're catching the fabric underneath. Sometimes when you're stretching things can kind of move out of place. So stop often and check. Okay, so now take your hood pattern piece, which is pattern piece number 6, and you're going to pin them together along this curved edge, which is the center back seam. So this edge like this, you're going to pin and sew at 5/8 seam allowance. And I'm going to switch back to my serger for this part and just serge that edge really fast. Okay, now if you sewed this seam using a sewing machine, you're going to need to clip your curves and press this seam open so it lays nice and flat. Next, on your pattern for the hood, there should be these fold lines. I'm going to mark my fold line just with a piece of chalk. This is the front of your hood. So what you're going to do is you're going to fold this back on the fold line. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually fold it in because of this thicker material. I'm going to fold it in once and sew along that line, and then fold it in again and sew along that line. Just because I find that's easier with a thicker material. If you have a more lightweight material, you can do as the pattern recommends and press under 1/4 of an inch all the way around, and then fold it on your fold line, and then stitch just close to this edge to keep it down. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and meet you back here. Okay, so now that we have our hood ready to go, we're going to go ahead and pin it on the neckline, right sides facing, matching notches and dots. So again, I like to start with the back seam. And make sure your neckband is facing down so that when you sew it, you can see the neckband on the outside. And then when you get to the edge, you're going to want to place the edge of your hood 5/8 of an inch away from the edge, because this is going to give you room to put your zipper in later. So you don't go all the way to the edge when you're pinning. Okay, so go sew that the zigzag stitch on your sewing machine or with your serger. So if you sewed with a sewing machine, you're going to want to stitch again close to the seam you just made 1/4 of an inch away, and then trim it down. And then you're going to press your seam down and stitch the seam allowance down on the outside so that all of that bulk stays put on the inside of your garment. Okay, so after you've sewn down the seam allowance, it should look something like this on the outside. Okay, next, grab your zipper. Okay, for the zipper, the instructions say to fold back on your side and press 5/8 of an inch. Now, because this material is really thick and doesn't really press very well and stay put, I am pinning down 5/8 of an inch just to keep that in place on both sides. You're going to take your zipper and place it so that this is at the top of your seam. Then you're going to take this little flap that's up above and stick it into the seam allowance so that it's hidden in between these layers right here. Then you're going to pin your zipper really good so it stays in place all the way down on both sides. Then you're going to baste your zipper in place using a zipper foot. And then you're going to sew on the outside perimeter 1/4 of an inch away, all the way down. You're going to cross at the bottom where it meets, and then all the way back up. Okay, after basting your zipper into place and you're happy with the placement, go ahead and put your stitch length down to normal length and sew in your zipper over your basting stitches. Okay, when you get to the end, make sure your needle is down and pivot. This is the bottom of the tape, the zipper tape. So I like to backstitch a few times just to secure that bottom in place. Okay. Okay, so now that your zipper is done, we're going to turn it wrong side out, and we're going to pin the arms and the side seams together, matching notches and seams. So go ahead and pin down the whole side seam from the cuff of the sleeve all the way down to the foot cuff. Okay, once your side seams are pinned, then you're going to sew or serge down the whole side seam and then repeat for the other side. Okay, after your side seams are done, all we have left are the cuffs for the sleeves and the legs. So grab pattern piece number 7, which is the sleeve band, and with right sides together, you're going to sew. Find your notches. There should be double notches on the side. You're going to sew this seam right here for both of these pieces. Okay, so now that you have the sleeve cuff sewn, you're going to turn them with wrong sides facing in, the right sides facing out, matching the seams up. So it looks like this. Then you're going to take your sleeve and line up. You're going to put right sides together, so the right side of the sleeve into the cuff, lining up the side seams and pinning it. Now, just like the neck band, we're going to need to stretch the cuff to fit the sleeve. And I always like to give it a little stretch before I take it to the machine. I'm going to pin, matching notches, making sure that the sleeve and the cuff line up nicely. So I'm going to do this part on my machine on a zigzag stitch, just so I can stretch nicely. Okay, so you're going to sew this on, sew your other cuff on, and then we will move on to the foot cuffs. Okay, so now that you have the sleeve cuffs sewn on, we're going to do the same process with pattern piece number 8, which is the leg band piece. And it's the exact same process as the arm cuffs. So go ahead and, with right sides together, sew along this edge on both of your pieces, turn them right sides facing out, and attach them to the bottom of your leg cuffs, bottom of your legs. Okay, so I've got my leg cuff pinned onto my leg, and I do want to note that when you sew, sew with a 5/8 seam allowance, and then sew 1/4 of an inch closer to this raw edge, just to double secure that that seam is nice and tight. And then after you're done sewing, you're going to press the seams up in toward the leg. And you're supposed to do that with the arm cuffs as well. Okay, you guys, that's it for Simplicity Pattern 8520. Hopefully it helped you in making your fun onesie. If you do happen to follow along and make one of these, tag me on Instagram at McCall Makes because I would love to see it. Thank you!